You've gotta be kidding me! So shouted the late great TNA color commentator Don West whenever something mental went down in the Impact Zone. He often had good cause to flex his vocal cords when it came to some of the outrageous spots TNA's stars would unleash. Whether it was in 6 sides or 4 sides, TNA's finest pushed the limits in an effort to get the wrestling world talking. So, let's talk about them, shall we? I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are the 10 most insane spots in TNA history. Join us! Number 10, Mind the Gap. AJ Styles had a habit of stealing just about every match he was in, regardless of how many people were in it or what the stipulation was. So when it came to Lethal Lockdown, TNA's answer to War Games, it didn't really matter that the Phenomenal One was confined to a cage or that he would have to share the spotlight with 7 of his co-workers. He had taken bumps off the side of the steel, had delivered a big splash off a support beam and threw a table on top of it, and most spectacularly of all, he had even jumped through the hole in the top of it. In 2009's iteration of the event, Styles literally ran and jumped through a gap not much bigger than himself to take out the trio of Kurt Angle, Booker T and Scott Steiner, kissing the edge of it on the way down. However, the main event Mafia men did such a piss-poor job of breaking AJ's fall that he basically took the brunt of it whilst they clumsily fell over. Number 9, Dreamer's Nightmare. When TNA got in on the act and ran their own ECW tribute show without actually calling it ECW or using the word extreme in any way, lest WWE's ace lawyer Jerry McDevitt send a small army of attorneys to Dixie Carter's house, there was every expectation that things would get a little nutty. Not every match at Hardcore Justice was a gore fest, but Eternal Enemies Tommy Dreamer and Raven were determined to bring a slice of blood-soaked Philadelphia violence to Orlando. With Mick Foley serving as special guest referee, Dreamer and Raven sought to emulate Foley's notorious 1999 Royal Rumble I Quit match with The Rock in the worst possible way. Handcuffing the innovator of violence's hands behind his back, Raven swung a chair at his rival's head. Thankfully, it was just the once and not the 1087 the Great One gave to Mrs. Foley's baby boy over a decade before, but this was ill-advised to say the least. With everything we had learned about the dangers of head trauma since the summer of 2007, you would think these veterans would know better than to tempt a concussion. Number 8, Angle's Lockdown Moonsault. Kurt Angle has often said that though most fans will always remember him based on his WWE career, he actually had some of his greatest matches and moments while under TNA's employ. It's true, it's damn true, that the Olympic gold medalist gave his all for the promotion and never put in a performance that felt like he was phoning it in. Angle was all too happy to push the envelope inside and outside of the squared circle if it helped his matches too, and it wasn't an unfamiliar sight to see him perform diving flips off the stage and other high-risk stunts. One of his riskiest was actually a repeat of something he had tried in WWE 9 years prior. At the culmination of his outstanding cage match with Ken Anderson at Lockdown 2010, Kurt laid his opponent out with a top rope German suplex before positioning him near the corner and beginning the big climb. Crossing his heart before using those mighty thighs to jump even higher in the air, the wrestling machine came crashing down with one of the damnedest moonsaults you're likely to see anywhere. The bean had well and truly kicked in. Number 7, APhenomenal Sell Job. The undisputed MVP of Golden Era TNA was AJ Styles. Present from the very first show, the inaugural X Division champion routinely put his physical well-being at stake in order to create memorable matches and moments. Some of the most memorable bouts from early TNA were of the inventive Ultimate X variety, with multiple stars aiming to retrieve the prize from the middle of the crisscrossed cables suspended above the ring. One of the very best of the bunch was the X Division title affair between Styles, Chris Sabin, and reigning champion Petey Williams at Final Resolution 2005. In a match full of breathtaking moves, spots, and sequences, one stood out above the rest. As the Phenomenal One was shimmying his way across to grab the belt, Sabin surprised him with a springboard missile dropkick to the midsection. Now, there are numerous ways to sell such a move: landing on your back, landing on your front, landing on your feet, some buckling while holding your ouchy tummy, but AJ opted for the spectacular and turned himself inside out with an incredibly risky inward flip. A one-time deal that hasn't been replicated since. There was such a fine margin for error, but he pulled it off with styles. Number 6, Hardy's monstrous Swanton. If there is a platform, ledge, ladder, or well, anything within climbing distance, Jeff Hardy will find a way to do a Swanton bomb off it. We saw him do it countless times in WWE, and he brought the act with him when he joined TNA. In 2005 alone, the charismatic Enigma performed the feat off the top of a cage through a table, off the Impact set, and off some beams backstage, but he saved his best and most insane leap for TNA's biggest show of the year. Competing with Sabu, Abyss, and Rhino in a Monsters Ball match at Bound for Glory, Hardy pulled out all the stops in his bid to steal the show and ensure a lifetime of lower back pain. Placing Abyss on a table on the concrete floor of the Impact Zone, Jeff went to the very top of the set and flew a solid 15 or so feet, clearing the ramp and the Monsters manager Father Mitchell, crashing with an almighty thud. Good night. Well, actually, not good night, because the poor bloke had to crawl his way to the ring for the finish, a comparatively harmless second rope pile driver from the Man-Beast. Number 5, the Falling Angel. And once again, we go to the potential death trap that is Ultimate X. When you think about what this match actually entails, climbing huge steel support columns to crisscrossing ropes that you'll then have to pull yourself across, inevitably either falling or more likely being knocked off them from a considerable height, it's a minor miracle that there haven't been more injuries associated with the gimmick. But that's not to say there haven't been some close calls. X Division mainstay Christopher Daniels came close to having his career ended when he and the lamentably named Suicide, portrayed here by Frankie Kazarian, took a terrifying plunge from the middle of the X at Bound for Glory 2009. According to Daniels, the idea was he would hit a flatliner while they were both up there, but his legs got tangled up and the two of them ended up hurling awkwardly towards the ring. The Fallen Angel came frighteningly close to spiking right on top of his head, something that would have no doubt put an end to his wrestling days, if not worse. When he got backstage, Daniels was confronted by an angry Samoa Joe, who warned him to never do anything like that again. I don't think he really needed the don't almost die advice, Joe, but it's nice of you to look out for your mates. Number 4, Abyss plays with fire. Along with AJ Styles, another TNA mainstay who did everything he could to help the company was Abyss. The monster was more than willing to suffer for the cause and made his eagerness to take a pounding one of his calling cards. Whether it was tables, chairs, tacks, or barbed wire, the big man was in his comfort zone working with plunder. Fire, on the other hand, is a bit of a different beast altogether. Teaming with Matt Morgan to challenge Beer Money for the tag team titles in a Monsters Ball match, also featuring Team 3D and LAX at 2008's Bound for Glory, Abyss found out firsthand just how unpredictable fire could be when Brother Ray and Brother Devon gave him a chokeslam off the stage through a flaming table. Now, the Dudleys, Team 3D, had done similar spots in the past, but this time the bump itself didn't quite extinguish the flames. On the contrary, Abyss's boiler suit was momentarily set ablaze, and it took a couple of tries with a nearby extinguisher to finally put the flames out. Now that's what I call the wrong kind of heat. Number 3, Kaz's Ultimate Cutter. Back to Ultimate X now, and if AJ's inward flip from earlier had a very fine margin of error, then the margins on this one were thinner than Brother Runt on a hunger strike. Kicking off 2007's Victory Road pay-per-view was an Ultimate X gauntlet match featuring Christopher Daniels, Homicide, Senshi, Jay Lethal, Frankie Kazarian, Petey Williams, Puma, Sonjay Dutt, Elix Skipper, and Shark Boy. The rules of the match saw wrestlers enter the fray at timed intervals, with eliminations occurring when someone was thrown over the top rope to the floor. The competitors left after the entire field had entered were then eligible to climb up for the Giant X. With a shot at the X Division title on the line, the 10 men reached deep into their bag of tricks, and the insanity peaked about 5 minutes from the finish with the sickest cutter you are likely ever going to see. Daniels was hanging upside down from the truss when Kazs jumped forward off the top rope and caught the fallen angel perfectly with the move. So much could have gone wrong here, as Daniels and Kazs nearly found out 2 years later. Number 2, Samoa Joe's flying stairs kick. If Samoa Joe decided to never leave his feet, nobody would bat an eyelid. Joe could have been the type of wrestler who rarely gets knocked down, but the surprisingly agile super heavyweight was a big bumping big man and had no qualms about getting picked up and thrown around. He was also game for flying down a flight of stairs and landing on jagged concrete if it meant connecting with a kick. Defending his TNA World title against Sting in the main event of Bound for Glory 2008, the Samoan submission machine had to call an audible when the two were fighting in the crowd at the Sears Center in Illinois. What was supposed to be a relatively simple flying forearm was modified into this ludicrous two-footer because Sting had moved further down the stairs than he was supposed to be. I mean, I think my audible would have simply involved walking down the stairs, but I guess that's why he's Samoa Joe and I'm not. Anyway, the bump looked like it could have been a career ender, and rumors persisted for years that Joe was forced to modify his style after it, but he has since dispelled that as a mere myth. Nutter. Number 1, Elix Skipper's Cage Walk Rana. Placed above the title matches and Macho Man Randy Savage's final match ever at Turning Point 2004 was the 6 Sides of Steel grudge match between America's Most Wanted and Triple X. And with good reason, because not only was it a genuinely great match and a worthy sequel to one they had had on an Asylum-era weekly pay-per-view 18 months earlier, but it also featured one of the most astonishing spots in wrestling history. With Christopher Daniels holding Chris Harris in place, Elix Skipper stood on top of the perilously thin steel panel and proceeded to walk the length of it before hitting the Wildcat with a picture-perfect Hurricane Rana to the mat below. I mean, how? Just how? Primetime had actually done his tightrope act on the actual ropes before, but never in these circumstances. He had actually wanted to try it in their previous cage match, but was put off due to the heat in the building causing extra perspiration and sensibly predicting that one errant slip could well be the end of him. On this night, however, it was perfect and will rightfully live on the highlight reel for eternity.